to the Eating at a Meeting podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Stuckrath, dietary needs expert, certified meetings manager, certified food protection manager. I have searched the globe to find people and businesses who are creating safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experiences for their employees, guests, and communities. In each episode, you will find authentic conversations about how food and beverage impacts inclusion, sustainability, culture, community, health, and wellness. I know that sounds like a lot, but we're going to cover it all. Are you ready to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line? If so, let's go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting. And this is a special Friday episode because it's Women's History Month, and I am trying to share with you as many fabulous women in food and beverage as I possibly can. And today with me is Chef Karla O. She is the chef owner of Bo.ka.do Scratch Kitchen in Puerto Rico. Hi, Karla.
Hi, Tracy. How are you?
I am good, thank you. And I told you this, and I posted it in when I described the session today. Is that I put it out there on the Instagram and saying, "Hey, who do you want me to interview for Women's HERstory Month, as I call it?" And everybody was like, "You've got to interview Chef Karla O." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" So I'm so glad that we found you. And I read some stuff about you in Forbes, and then on the PBS video that you did. So I'm so glad that we were able to connect.
I am super grateful for this. Yes. Thank you so much.
So you have a restaurant, Bo.ka.do, in a farmer's market in Puerto Rico. Tell us about how you got there. And I love the story that you were telling me before we went live.
So about 8 years ago, I had this, it was like 10 years ago. I had this dream of having a restaurant. And I was very ill, so all I did was write about it. And life changed, and things were able to fall into place for it to happen. So I stepped into this new life, leaving behind my life in Florida. And then I moved to Puerto Rico, which is actually my hometown in Maya West, where I do the business in the farmer's market. And I came here and I just fell in love with the space. And I said, this is where I would have a vegan restaurant. If anything, I have the best sourced local produce and a great ambiance. So here we are.
Well, and you were telling me before we got started that you didn't intend it to be a vegan restaurant.
No. Well, actually, I wanted it to be a vegan restaurant, but I never intended to put the word vegan in the title of it or the name of it. I wanted just to be a restaurant where people would come and just eat, and it didn't matter. And it worked out that way. 94% of the people that do visit us, they're not even vegan. So it's an amazing thing to watch.
And so they're just coming because they've heard it's great food then.
Yes. It's great inspired food. It's creative cuisine, beautiful, beautiful local produce. But I do give you this tour around the world from a farmer's market in downtown Maya West in Puerto Rico. So you do have Indian food and Thai food and Creole food and French food and Italian food and all these things happening. And you don't even have to get a passport.
And you're using all local ingredients. I think you told me like 80% of what you use is from the farmer's market right there.
Not only the farmer's market, but also local growers and agricultures. I do have my favorites, of course, that have been able to supply me with food throughout all these changes, even post Maria, Fiona, and all the other things, pandemic, and throughout, I've kept those relations close.
Wow. So Hurricane Maria, what'd you say, Fiona, and the pandemic. You survived all of those things.
And the earthquakes that we went through and all these things that happened in the meanwhile. So we've thrived within those circumstances.
That's fantastic. Now, how many covers do you do a day? And when are you open?
Well, we open from 11 to 4 p.m. from Wednesday to Saturday. On Saturdays, we're here until 3 o'clock. Not really staying too long, but I usually do stay longer, maybe 5 o'clock, depending on how it's moving. Right at this point, I'm losing count. This has been an amazing weekend. We can do between anywhere 25 on a slow day to maybe 100 on a good day.
Wow.
And
Okay.
crazy. And I love the chaos of the kitchen. I thrive in it. I enjoy it too much.
And how many team members do you have in the kitchen with you, and how have they blossomed from cooking just vegan, plant-based foods?
Well, right now I have one person with me back there, Orlando. He's my assistant. And when he first came here, he wanted to be a waiter.
Okay.
And I said, no, you're going to come in the back with me, guy. You're going to learn. And well, the way that I do teach my collaborators back there is I teach them by a process of, they don't see any of my recipes. They have to work side by side with me, learn the technique visually. And then we go to the senses. So tasting, the smelling, and everything else. So he was very a quick learn. He's been with me almost 2 years.
Wow. Okay. So you're designing and you're teaching them to cook through the senses and not from a recipe.
Yes.
That's really, I think, valuable.
Yeah, it is. I love it because they get to put a little bit of their soul in there, but it tastes like me, like when I cook it. Mm-hmm. But it becomes fun for them. It becomes a challenge, and it's not a conventional way of teaching. I'm also a professor for culinary arts at a local university, and there I have to be more structured. But in my kitchen, I like them to feel the food and feel the process. So it's a little different. I'm not very traditional with everything I learned in Le Cordon Bleu. I learned it and then I threw it away. I love it.
Well, they taught you the basics, which is good. And I think that's what they do. I think the purpose of that too is to teach you the basics and let you run with it, right?
Yes.
I would hope so. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you're doing 100 covers, 25 to 100 covers a day. And over the course of time, what do new people coming into the restaurant realize? And do they even realize that it's plant-based?
We always let them know. We have a little speech before when they come in and they sit down. This is a vegan restaurant, but we don't use anything that's processed. So all of our meats are actually real plants, like real mushrooms. We don't use any other processed type cold cuts or meat or anything like that. So it's a different experience. They're expecting to have something that's been processed, and then when I explain it to them, it's not. I treat every meal or every plate or every dish as a work of art. I'm very into the senses with that. So when people come in, and that was the real intention behind me placing Bo.ka.do here, is that everything would be just triggered in you, like all these wonderful things, the smells, the sounds, the music also has to go with the food, which I do create a lot of my menu through music. So that comes in and it's just, it's an overall feeling of you coming to a place and you know it's going to be good or it's going to be different. So when people that are new then come in, they already have all these things happening before they actually get the plate on the table. So it's really cool.
I really like that because it is, even like when creating events, the ambiance, and people discount music a lot. Oh, you don't need any music. We don't need it. And it really does add a whole new sense of experience and bringing that to the food that you're eating and the people that you're enjoying the food with.
Totally. When I do host local bands here, I make a menu based on their music.
Oh, really? Talk about that. That's cool.
The playlist that they're going to be playing here live, and I will create a menu completing totally from the melodies and the stuff that I heard. So that's also the way that I get inspired, is through music, not just being in the farmer's market and seeing the produce or getting something new in my hands. It's also what I'm listening to. So I do a lot of that. And now I'm trying to teach my collaborators here a different technique. So now we're using more of our hands, not just in the cutting motion, but when we're mixing and we try to feel how the fibers of the product is and things like that. So it is a sensorial thing, not just for the client, but also for the staff and for the way that I cook here.
And I think that's a whole nother thing that you've seen it in movies, I'm sure, when they're talking about getting your fingers into dough and moving that around. And it really, I think, I love that of what you're doing because it teaches them a little bit more of even connecting with the food that they're making.
Totally. And that's really important. That's something that has been lost along the way. And eating is a very, very personal thing. And when you come to spaces like this, which I enjoy eating now, but I really don't get to do that. I don't have the experience that I provide for my guests here. So it's kind of a letdown. You know, over here we have a really good customer service rating and the food is great and the ambiance is great. So it's a wholeness about the experience when you come to Bo.ka.do. And what I don't have Wi-Fi on purpose, so people get to connect. I like to show people who I am so they know that what I'm bringing to the table as the person that's cooking most of their meals is a person that has knowledge. It's not just, oh, she wants to make money. No. That's fine. That's perfect. But I also have great knowledge and great love for what I do. And I want you to meet me. So when you taste my food, you're like, I get it. I get it. This is her. This is the love she puts into the food. This is her knowledge. This is the intention for the food.
That just warms my heart. And the name of the restaurant, Bo.ka.do, talk about what that means and then how you changed it.
Okay. So Bo.ka.do Scratch Kitchen is the full name of the restaurant. Bo.ka.do means small bite. But in Spanish, it means small bite in Spanish, but it's spelled with a C. I broke it down, Bo.ka, because my name is Karla with a K, and then finished it off with a do. So you're actually eating a little bit of my story of who I am as a person, as a chef. My menu is a very conscious menu. I did everything based on my life story of my travels, of a lot of emotional steps that I went through. So it's food. This place is not only healing for others to come in here, but it also healed me in my process. And I love sharing that. And people get it when they sit here and they eat and they're like, why would you be here hidden? I'm like, because our access is kind of limited or it's kind of funny to get here. So we did make Best Hidden Gem for Maya West the last 3 weeks. Yeah, 3 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Best vegan restaurant in Maya West and also third overall best restaurant. So,
wow, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm really proud of what we're doing here. Even though we're a little out of the ways, people do find us. And it's beautiful because they do get the experience of, oh my God, it's hidden. The food is good. Everything's great. So when I intended for people to eat a little piece of my story was to have that whole experience, not just the food or just the space. It's a cool place. Okay. No, but the feeling of that healing that comes through food.
That's fantastic. Now, you said you were sick. And we don't need to go into the details of that, but did using plant-based foods help you in healing you as well?
Totally. When I decided to go vegan was because I didn't find any help with traditional medicine, or conventional medicine actually. And so I started going to different type of natural doctors and learning about it. And not through the internet, but mostly through books, because I'm a big reader. I rather read in a real book than in the internet. So I started getting all these beautiful vintage books and then started learning about the diet and then the lifestyle later on. And then I just made the connection and I healed myself through that. So it was an amazing journey with that too.
I bet. Yeah, 'cause there's lots to learn about food and what it can and cannot do for us or what it, can do for and can do against us, I guess I should say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you've been around for 10 years and you mentioned the hurricanes and the earthquakes and in the PBS segment that you were on, and I will share that with people. I've got to get it real quick, get that link. I'll share it with them. But the highs and lows of owning a business. Can you talk about that?
Sure. When I first started, I was one of the first people that I really did that I had knowledge of doing something at this way. Vegan food, yes, it's here. It's been part of our diets because of religious reasons and other factors. But fun, creative, upscale vegan food, that is not something that you would find here easily. little niches, and mostly on the east side of the island. The west side of the island, there was a lack, but I didn't create the restaurant because of that lack. I created because I didn't have a place to eat. So I figured if I didn't have a place to eat, there must be other people. But educating people about conscious eating and the vegan lifestyle has been a very challenging experience for me. At least at the beginning of my journey, with maybe the first 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I created Bo.ka.do almost over 10 years ago, it's been running a total of 5 in the between of all the pauses because of all the external situations with pandemic and the hurricane. And that's it. That would be the lowest. All the interruptions. We have a lot of interruptions here in Puerto Rico. A lot of light outages and a lot of water outages and a lot of there's not enough product because we sometimes get food from outside and mainland, and it's frustrating to see that. And you just roll with the punches a lot of the time. Oh, the highs? Well, the highs are things like this and people coming in, and I'm having all these wonderful human beings come and share with me or have a birthday party or a baby shower or just say, guess what, we're pregnant, or guess what, my dog died. Can you make something that, oh my God, this food reminds me of my grandma's food, but it's plant-based, which is another thing. I like to play with nostalgia and feelings and memories because that's the way that we connect. Oh, grandma's cookies, grandma's cooking, mom's this, mom's that. It's food feeds the soul, is a connection that we make with our loved ones, but also the world we live in. If we have good experiences with it. So I like to also make sure people have that experience.
That's probably very meaningful to everybody who eats there and participates in those kinds of meal functions, because I think food is so much more powerful than we take it for granted, than we consider it on a daily basis, right? We eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And if you're at an event, you eat breakfast break, lunch break, dinner. It's just a standard thing, right? And I like the fact that you bring all of those different things to that meal, because when we share a meal together, we really are able to build relationships with each other.
Totally.
So what words of wisdom have you received from other women in your life, mothers, grandmothers, aunts, friends?
I have a wonderful support group of women and men, vegan and non-vegan people. It's an amazing thing. I'm very blessed. I can say that for sure. I've had my aunt, who's also an entrepreneur here in my US. She's always my biggest fan, my mother as well. And they always just go forward, just keep doing it. Don't worry about anything else. I also follow my instinct a lot. I have even though I have great people that always have my back, I also have my back. So I feel, that as long as I do what I do for me and I don't worry about anybody else, I don't believe in competition. I don't believe in looking to the side to see who's doing what, because I'm so hyper focused on what I can do best next that I don't have time to outside source anything. So I'm always looking at my dishes, at my notebook. I have notebooks everywhere because every time I get an idea, even when I'm sleeping, I wake up and I'll write it down the next day. There's something on the off menu, like, what happened here? How'd you get this idea? I was sleeping, I woke up, and that's what happened.
That's very cool. Now, do you have any female heroes that you look up to, and how has their work shaped what you do?
I'm going to tell you a funny story.
Okay.
I love Julia Childs.
Okay.
And when I was a little girl, I grew up watching PBS. Like, everything PBS was my favorite thing in life. So Reading Rainbow, Bob Ross, Julia Childs, I was just so into that. And I learned to cook through her. This is why I didn't make the connection until later on. So she was also a Cordon Bleu graduate, but I was walking through life not making the connections. Now, when PBS came, I accepted, but I didn't make the connection. And so when I sat with it, and I think it was like 3 months ago, I'm talking to my daughter. She was like, "Mommy, I'm so proud of you." I have 4 kids. So she was like, "Mommy, I'm so proud of you. This." And I was like, "Yeah, PBS, I think is the most meaningful to me because I learned to cook from Julia Childs. So
that makes me cry.
So the connection was there. So it was like a full circle thing where I had an idol growing up. I went to school where she went to school. I didn't make the connection. It just was in me already. And then I'm on there like she was on there. So she's my hero. And I have a lot of women in my life who are amazing entrepreneurs as well. Like Frances Gonzalez from Vegan Wise. I admire that woman so much. And along the way, all these people that have come through, which I'm just grateful to have that connection with. But yeah, Julia Childs and that whole thing is, forget it.
Oh no, that's a great story and a great connection. Okay, I'm going to come back to one question in a minute, but you mentioned vegan wines. So do you serve vegan beverages alongside the food?
Right now I can't. There's a law where I have my restaurant that does not allow me to sell alcohol unless legislature can fix it for me. I'm working on that right now.
Okay.
But I do use wines for cooking, and I've used Frances's beautiful wines in my risotto or as a pairing for other dishes that just for the photo op and for myself. Right. Mm-hmm. And in other events that I've done, I do use those wines. I have.
Okay. All right. We have somebody popped in here. I can't say her name. She said, that is so awesome.
That's my child.
Yay. Yes. Thank you for watching.
Thank you, my love. I love you.
Okay. So how have they shaped what you do? Your 4 children.
I did everything for them.
I'm gonna cry. She's so proud of you and she loves you too.
Yeah, that's my second born.
So say that. So what did you say to me? Because I got distracted.
Well, I did everything for them at the end of the day. For me and for them. When I decided to divorce, I had 4 kids. And when I moved over here, I didn't have any support, even though their father's an amazing man. Just didn't work out between us, but he was always very present in their life. But I had them the majority of the time. So when I decided to actually make this happen, my feel was being able to provide for them and give them the example that no matter what life throws at you, they've been with me through sickness and health and all these other things. I wanted to show them that even though I'm their mother, and they see me as this Wonder Woman, I'm a human and I'm going to fall and get up and fall and get up. And they've been through this whole thing with me. And I still do this for them. I still do.
That's awesome. And do they help you in the restaurant?
Actually, my eldest does. Isabel is my right-hand person here. And she's amazing. She's great with the customer service and she's on top of things. She's like, Mommy, you know what? You're kind of stressed. Go in the back. I'll handle it. Damage control person.
How old is she?
She's 22.
Okay.
Yeah. Awesome. Amelia, she's 18. And Diego, they live in Florida. They're studying out there. They live with their dad now. They've been there a couple of years. And then Roman, who's the smallest one, he's 12. He lives with me as well. And he's my number one fan too. He's with me up and down with all my craziness with the restaurant. And he loves it.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. So what has been your greatest obstacle in starting this business and keeping it afloat besides hurricanes?
Single motherhood.
Oh, yeah. I bet.
And try to balance everything at once and try to be available to everything and everyone. And having 4 kids, it's not easy. It's 4 different characters, 4 different humans, 4 different basketball, track, modeling, all these things. And then trying to keep the restaurant. But there's this wonderful thing that occurs. And you're able to find this quasi-balance that almost works when you are stuck in the middle of trying to do so many things, because I'm trying to have this social life, this motherhood, my entrepreneur life, and then rest, and then everything in between. So you get good at it. You get good at maneuvering these weird turbulent waters. And then all of a sudden when it's calm, you're like, something's missing. What's happening? But it worked out for me. And then I made a priority to rest when I was tired versus or pre being extremely tired so that I can be a better human to everybody around me. And I just decided to put self-care as a number one priority in everything that I did so that I was able to give everybody a better version of myself. Even when I cook, sometimes I'm in a bad mood. I'm not going to cook. I'm not cooking today because that's energy that you transfer and you don't want that. You want good energy. You want things to taste good. So you have to be good.
Oh, that's a great message across the board for anybody, whether they're cooking or producing an event or just hanging out with their kids. That's a really, really important message. So how, being a woman in the food and beverage industry, restaurant industry, how has that been? And especially on an island, right? I mean, it's very male-centric industry for the most part. And you're a chef running your own restaurant. So how has that been, and what do you see for women in the industry going forward?
I have been in this industry for 25 years. I've seen the best and the worst of how women have been treated throughout. And I've been bullied by men. I was locked up in a cooler when I was working at this 5-star restaurant. I became the first woman to hold a position as an expediter in a very old restaurant, and I would get my tools hidden or raw meat that looked like a certain body part just dumped on my station and all these things. But I worked really hard and I made sure that I always led with respect, even if I knew they didn't like me because I was a woman. And then I dominated that because they saw that I would not lose my cool. So I always try. What worries me is not only is it male dominated, but also a lot of women in the industry don't support each other. And that's something that we're seeing now more than ever. When we're such a small group, we should be having each other's back, but it feels like they're all competing one against the other. And that's not how it works. I feel like if we do collaborate, we're able to have this voice that is firm and powerful within our field. And when I first moved to Puerto Rico, I faced that a lot. Oh, you're not really a chef. You're just somebody who plays with vegetables. And I was like, okay, I play with vegetables. Thank you for that. And I didn't go against what they were saying. I just kept working hard and letting my work show that and that's the thing. I constantly proving myself to the point that at this point, I don't care anymore. I just show you my work and how far I've come in the last 8 years, especially I was recognized as Entrepreneur of the Year for the Plaza last December. So there's the Forbes thing, the PBS thing, the other things that I have been acknowledged in throughout my career since I've been here. So I'm very proud of it, and I'm humbled by the experience because I have to recognize that I do work hard, but the intention without action is just a wish. And I didn't want a wish. I wanted to manifest the real thing. And I think I've been good with that. And if I can show that in the industry and more women that do join see it, they're going to want to be collaborators versus competitors. And that's what we need, collaborators. Because what I do, you may not do the same way, but it's useful, that transfer. And yeah, this industry is full of men. Yes, it's full of machista mindset. But you know what? Let it be. Let us play with food and let us eat it and let us show the world how great it is to be in a kitchen and how to work through all these obstacles, but in a cohesive way.
Mm-hmm. That's a really important message. And I need to introduce you to Lindsay Ofsasek, who is my guest on Monday with the Lee Initiative. So I'm going to definitely make sure that you two are connected.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
And even Randy Weinstein, who was on a couple of weeks ago with FAB, Females in Business, and helping women succeed in the food and beverage industry. So I definitely connecting the three of you together. How in the title of this is like using your vegan restaurant to educate and empower others. So how do you feel that the food and beverage that you're cooking is empowering the community that you're in? and connecting others?
So I'm in a farmer's market. I think I'm in the best place. When people come here, they ask me, where do you get your produce? And I tell them, well, downstairs. And this is my favorite spot to buy it at. I'm making these beautiful connections between my clients and the people that are downstairs. They're connected in a way that maybe you don't get that connection through going to a supermarket per se. You make these connections with these people that are vendors. And actually the next week when you come back, he's like, hey, guess what? I thought of you and I got a little something extra that maybe you might like. And then you create these relationships. And that's how I feel like we're also empowering, because human connection is lost through a lot of social media connections and all these things. And we get to connect, but we're far. Here we are sitting down, we're eating, and we're meeting each other. There's days where I don't have Wi-Fi here. So when my clients come in and maybe somebody's talking to me at one table, the other table overhears it, and all of a sudden the whole restaurant hears it, and there's a big conversation happening. And then you're creating, oh, really? And you sell this or you do that? Oh, that's great. I do this. Here's my business card. So we're empowering these people to make that human connection again, not only through that one-on-one, but when they're eating, oh, what are you eating? What's going on over there? And they're like, oh, this is great. You have to try this, and tell her to give you the secret sauce in the back. It's not on the menu. And then they tell on me, and I got to go get the sauce and all that stuff. And then they create these little bonds. And it's beautiful because it becomes almost a place of networking. So people come here, and I guess by me being my genuine self, it allows them to also be themselves and be a little more free, even if they're eating here for an hour or 20 minutes or whatever, however long they take. So the magic of Bo.ka.do is that connection. It's beautiful through food, through people, through music, through everything.
That's so much fun. I was out to dinner with my parents, and I think it was my brother, and we were looking at somebody else's table, and my brother's like, don't ask them, don't be, but I'm like, I am that person. I'm like, oh, what are they eating? And I talk to strangers, so it is my thing. But me too. It's just fun to see how they experienced it. And it was funny because that table ended up talking back to us. Well, what are you eating? And it was just fun. And they were from out of town, and it made for some good conversation across the board. And I think that I love the fact that your restaurant does that, and just creating conversations amongst each other. So what are 5 things that you appreciate about what you do? And you don't have to give 5. What are 3 things?
Well, 5 things or 3 things. I want to say the ability that I just get to get up and do it. That's my number 1. I get up every morning and I don't work. I play with food and people eat it. And that's the best thing that could ever happen to me. I get to put myself on a plate and my soul, and most of the dishes that I create, I cry when I'm cooking them, especially when I see something so beautiful. I did make a cake. It was like an orange and basil cake, and I cried, and I didn't even taste it. It was just this feeling I got from getting these beautiful oranges that were locally grown from Las Marias, and the basil was from somebody's yard that they brought for me, and then everything just came together, and the smells, and I just went into this. So that emotional thing that it creates in me, I'm sure it's transferable to everybody else that tastes it. So I get to wake up and do this every day, and I play with food and people eat it, and I get to put myself out there in these plates. And I'm not fearful that it might get rejected. I think I never have gotten, or maybe I can count on one hand how many plates I've gotten returned, or in the last 15 years of my career. So it's
right.
It's a beautiful thing. I get to share this with people. And I know I'm leaving something behind that I don't know what it is, but I know my kids are going to be able to see and look at mommy and think, damn, she did this for us and for herself. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a lot. It's a lot of things. I could go on and on, but you said 5.
That's okay. No, that was perfect. So what was my question? Okay. So I love the fact that you said that you didn't put the word vegan on your restaurant name. purposefully so that people can just come in and enjoy the food. So, and now I have like 3 questions from that thought. There's a lot of vegan food that uses nuts and wheat and some of the top allergens, because I'm around, I talk about allergens and things like that. So how do you go about doing those things and sharing that information? And then the other part of that is how do you define food inclusion, right? Because you've got a variety of people who eat different ways, right? For specific reasons. So can you talk about the allergens as it relates to vegan food and then about inclusion?
Sure. It's a scratch kitchen. So we have this freedom of omission and inclusion within the ingredients that we have. We do handle a lot of customers who have allergies that you wouldn't even imagine, not just nuts or gluten or other things, or banana allergies and cinnamon and mushroom. So with it being a scratch kitchen, I'm able to maneuver these great flavors and omit the allergens for these people. So everything that I have on my menu can be gluten-free, it can be nut-free, or it can come as it does with the original inspiration. Mm-hmm. So we are very food inclusive here, including, except, I'm going to say exception, I do have this thing where I am open in a public space, and a lot of people think that because we're in a farmer's market, they can bring items that contain animal products. That is a deal breaker, and you cannot pass the threshold if you have that intention to eat here. So I do very kindly suggest that if they're going to eat here, they must order to go, because this is the only vegan restaurant, 100% vegan restaurant that does not, that offers, better said, that offers a safe space for people who are vegan to come and eat without any cross-contamination or anything that may make them feel uncomfortable because of somebody eating chicken next to them.
Right.
Or whatever it is that they want to eat. So I do get a little irked about that. But for the most part, being a scratch kitchen, we're able to have something for everybody. We even have raw desserts sometimes. Raw desserts, those usually have nuts. And if you have a gluten allergy, well, we have something else for you. There's always something for everybody here. So I think we're very inclusive in that sense.
That's really great. I need to send my friend Jim. I need to come down there first of all, but my friend Jim would love it as well. He and his wife live in New York, my thought went away. You kind of said it a few minutes ago when you were talking about leaving this for your kids, but how do you want to be remembered in history?
As an agent of collaboration, I live a life I have a very peaceful life. And I want to contribute to this world that kind of peace and also that kind of love. So maybe that's what I might be remembered as, how much I loved and I placed it on a plate. It's like, she loved what she was doing. She loved everything about it. And I think that's how I want to be remembered. If anything, leave in history. She created a beautiful dishes, plant-based, giving an homage to her culture, to the food that's grown here, to the people who grow that food here. So I think that would be where I would stand, especially as a chef, that I was able to translate the flavors of my culture, the flavors of my ancestors, into a totally cruelty-free meal, using the products that are grown here, using our sazon and our flavor and our adobo and our sofrito, but in a humane, conscious way.
Well, I was just going to ask you what does a safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experience mean to you? But that you just answered it in a different way. I mean, in 2 of those answers, like you talked about, you provide a safe experience. You work with your local farmers and producers, and I think that is just amazing. And I mean, just a little bit of a twist on that is like, so your farmers that are downstairs, and you said you've got your ones that you work with a lot, they've got your back, but how has working with them downstairs helped elevate them and the value that they feel about themselves and the work that they do?
Well, I always give them praise and prize, especially on my page. I let people know this is where I consume, this is where I get my produce. And it might not be locally sourced with this person, but they are very hardworking local people. And I love to make that distinction. So it's not that I only support the local people here, but this is a holistic thing. So I do praise them, and I include them in my menu making, and they don't even know it. But I do walk down the hallways and I look and I'm like, okay, this is the inspiration for today's beautiful tomatoes, or these beautiful cucumbers, or this malanga, all these beautiful things. And then they don't know how much they inspire me downstairs, but I always make sure that people know that they have the best produce available and that we're here.
That's awesome. Okay, so is there anything else that you want to in like, I forgot the word, you want to instill into others about what you're doing in Puerto Rico? And this is Chef Karla O, and she has a restaurant in Bo.ka.do, Scratch Kitchen in Puerto Rico. So if you're going to Puerto Rico anytime soon, you need to go find her in this farmer's market. But what else do you want listeners to know about? This is Women's History Month. So about what you're doing and how you're making history, making your own mark in food and beverage.
I was daring enough to create this concept, scared to the bone. And we as women, a lot of times we place ourselves in the back burner while we let our husbands rise and take care of our children and all these things. And I think that me taking this huge leap and only thinking in my head, even though I was scared that it was going to work out, that I had a chance to create the life that I wanted to live, the way that I wanted to live, by putting myself in the front of the burner and then replacing that front of the burner with me standing in front of the stove and leading it. I think it empowers a lot of women who are maybe too afraid to make that leap. Say, no, but I have little kids, or I have children. Listen, I have 4 kids and I did it. I went to law school and I ditched that too. And I went to go to cook because my passion has always been in the kitchen. So sometimes the biggest gift is on the other side of fear. And sometimes you got to say, hey, fear, let's be best friends and let's make this leap together. So I think that that's something that we as women should focus on. It's okay, we have fear in the decisions that we make. A lot of times, fear of what people are going to think of us, what our children are going to think of us. But let's just work with it and see how far we can actually go and maybe inspire our children and other women around us to take.
Holy moly, woman. Chef Nina Curtis, thank you so much for tagging Chef Karla on Instagram. And somebody just made a comment. Let's see what that comment is. Oh, yes. Amelia, please ask questions. Type them in the chat there. Yeah, go ahead. We got plenty of time. We could talk for hours. And just so everybody knows, Amelia is Chef Karla's daughter. So she's asking questions, but you do have to type it into that Facebook chat so that I can bring it up onto the screen. Okay, so while we're waiting for her to do that, because you said you watched Julia Childs when you were growing up in PBS. Did you know then that you wanted to be a chef? What did you want to be when you grew up?
When I was a little kid, my first memories, I wanted to be a gynecologist.
You wanted to be a what? A
gynecologist. And because I wanted to be the person that brought babies into the world.
Okay. So,
obstetrician. And then later on, I remember I was like maybe 6 years old, and for Christmas, all of my grandmothers and my aunt and my mom and my dad, they all got together and they got me this beautiful kitchen, like a toy kitchen. And my dad made a little house, so just like their bigger house, so that we can have my kitchen. And I would cook there. And I remember it was one of these play school house kitchens with a plastic food. And I would always like cook plastic meals for everybody that would come see my mom. They had to come to my little house first so I can cook for them. So I remember at 7 years old making ice cream with my grandfather. So I always had been in a kitchen. And at 15, I started working in a fast food industry. And then from then on, I was like, I got pregnant at 19 and I said, I'm going to law school. So I went to law school. And then when I had my fourth baby, I said, I can't do that. I'm going to be what I wanted to be since before that. And that was to go to culinary art school. And I did.
That's fantastic. Well, and I'm glad that you stopped cooking with plastic because plastic is not super healthy. And now you're cooking with plants, not plastic.
Plants,
which is awesome.
Plastic and now with plants.
Exactly. All right. So Amelia is actually asking you a question that I have failed to ask you, but she got to it. So I'm excited. She's based on your experience